What's up, Ada Gang? Welcome into Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed, as a part of today's brief update, focusing on Bitcoin, looking at the macro news markets, and then, of course, diving a little bit deeper into the Cardano ecosystem, taking a look at some of the most recent announcements coming in from projects or builders across the network, as well as a brief update surrounding a governance. Now, if it's your first time stopping by the channel, my goal is to help you find your footing within the Cardano and Bitcoin ecosystems. If you appreciate this type of content, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up on the way in. It's by far one of the easiest ways to support me here as a content creator. If you want more, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and leave those down below. Now, if you want to extend your support for the channel even further, consider delegating your ADA with either of the two Dapp Central stake pools, which both share the ticker DAPP. As always, thank you for the consideration and support. Now we're going to dive right on in here, taking a look at the Bitcoin charts. We're continuing to trade in this particular range with support coming in at around $92,000 per Bitcoin and resistance overhead at around $109,000 to $110,000 per Bitcoin. Now we are trading at the bottom half of the range, meaning technically speaking, we are slightly leaning more towards a bearish posture, but we're going to see how things play out here. Bitcoin typically, being range bound for months on end until there's a huge breakout, right, in either direction. Again, this time, could we see another leg higher, or could we potentially see some time back at the $60,000 to $70,000 range before a leg up higher? Now, taking a look here at Cardano very briefly, again, caught in this range here with support coming in at around 65 cents and resistance overhead at around the 80-cent range per ADA. If we're able to reclaim that, I think we're going to see a retest around $1.30. But again, that all hinges on what Bitcoin will do next. Now, some unfortunate news here, but this has just came in here from Cointelegraph stating the states of Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming have all rejected bills for state-managed Bitcoin reserves over volatility concerns. Now, anyone who's been here within the crypto space knows that volatility is just a part of the game. If you're able to be patient enough to really sit things out, you are typically going to end up in a net positive position or in a gain. And so the fact that some of these states have opted not to put their funds into a state-managed reserve, it does make sense because of volatility, but if they look at the long-term benefits, I think it's a no-brainer. But then also keep in mind that this is not specific to any sort of federal mandates or federal guidelines. So we still could see reserves being held or managed in Bitcoin, right, at a federal level. It's just that as it stands right now, with these three states specifically, they've all made sure to reject any approaches or offers to operate some sort of reserve using a Bitcoin. Now, on some bullish news, right, we're looking at the other side of the coin here. We've got Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, which has now doubled down on its Bitcoin offer, and they've added 20,000 Bitcoins valued at nearly $2 billion, bringing their average price to $97,000 per Bitcoin. So they're literally right at break even. But imagine when Bitcoin shoots up to $150,000 per Bitcoin, or even if we hit $200,000 per Bitcoin, Michael Saylor and MicroStrategies could become one of the most profitable, right, individuals as well as publicly traded companies that are currently out there. And what's also interesting is the fact that people have been trading, or at least using MicroStrategy stock as sort of a lever, right, or as some sort of exposure while it's indirect to Bitcoin, given how much Bitcoin they actually hold. So I want to briefly start the day off here by touching on the positive and obviously the negative as it pertains to Bitcoin. But let's jump into Cardano, and we're going to kick things off here specifically touching on governance. So if you aren't already aware, I believe it's once every week, maybe 2 weeks, we get an Intersect development update. And I want to just take the opportunity to briefly break this down, where they talk about the net change limit which is also referenced as the NCL, and the fact that there's been a proposal proposed on GovTools to highlight the importance of the NCL and for the community to begin deciding what the NCL will be for the year of 2025. Scrolling down, there's also a little bit of chatter here about some committee elections, where we've got the Intersect Steering Committee, who's officially approved the election process for the upcoming second round of Intersect committee elections. So if you want to join any of the 7 Intersect committees, you have the opportunity to apply, where we're going to see the application process opening up on March 17th. On the 31st is the deadline. And then we have member voting beginning on the 9th of April. And that concludes on the 23rd of April. And then we've got the official round of election results announced on the 30th of April. Now, it also states here that at their inaugural election, which took place back in late 2024, Intersect successfully filled 31 seats across, again, their 7 committees and their governing board, with over 123 candidates in participation. Now, they break down some additional other bits of content and news here. One of them being the fact that the Cardano Constitution has officially gone into effect. I broke this down in a separate video, but we had the interim constitution, which was in effect up until yesterday, or the 23rd of February, where we now have the official Cardano Constitution. Now, keep in mind that we've got 7 different governance proposal actions, one of them allowing us to actually change the Constitution. But again, this is really the beginning of a brand new era for Cardano and the ecosystem as a whole. Now, for the sake of time, I obviously cannot break down the entire newsletter, but shout out to everyone who's contributed to Intersect and governance as we continue to grow here in the ecosystem. Now, briefly touching on the net change limit that I highlighted there earlier, it breaks down here the fact that we as a community need to better understand and justify exactly how much ADA can be pulled out in a particular year. Again, this is referenced as the NCL, or the net change limit. So it states here that prior to the submission of any budget request, a net change limit must be formally agreed upon. Failure to establish an NCL shall render any such budget request unconstitutional and therefore inapplicable. And so if you guys aren't aware, as it currently stands, we've got the Intersect proposed annual budget, which is sort of making its way around town, people contributing and making minor changes or at least edits to the actual proposal. But without this NCL in place, we won't actually be able to make that official withdrawal in order to pay out anybody who's a part of that proposal or that annual budget, if that's the budget that the community actually votes to see. Now, they break down a little bit more information about the NCL, but it states that the net change limit for this particular period, or at least for the periods of Epoch 532 all the way till 604, should be set at 350 million ADA. And so if I'm not mistaken, I think the annual budget for Intersect is at around 250 or 260 million ADA, meaning that it's roughly around that net change limit. But this is definitely something that we want to be mindful of. So if you want to find out more about this, I'll leave the link to this down below, but this is just at its very early stages. And this is proposed as an info action before anything actually happens in terms of parameter changes after we can all agree on this info action. Now, while we're on the topic of governance, I have to briefly touch and give you guys an update on the Treasury tax reduction, which again, I released a fully dedicated video on this, but in a nutshell, there's a 20% Treasury tax every epoch when we have the reserves and the transaction fees collected. And before that's distributed as rewards back over to stake pool operators, there's a 20% tax cut that is redirected back into the Cardano Treasury. As it currently stands, it's roughly 4.9 million ADA per epoch that's going back into the Treasury. And this is aiming to decrease that amount from 20% to 10%, which would therefore reduce the rate at which the Treasury is currently growing. However, that reduction or that tax amount would actually be redistributed back over to Cardano delegators or Cardano stakers. So the positive being an increase in staking rewards, but the potential negatives there being a decrease in the rate that we're currently funding the Cardano Treasury. Now, I saw a lot of mixed comments in my last video, a lot of people in favor of the tax reduction, a lot of people not in favor of the tax reduction, some people actually sort of meeting in the middle. suggesting a 15% tax cut or 15% tax rate as opposed to 20%, but stating that 10% might be too much, therefore again stagnating the growth of the Cardano treasury. Now, what's interesting is that we've actually seen the majority of DREPs voting no for this particular proposal. And so as it currently stands, we've only got 10% of the DREPs in favor, and we still have Emergo, who's chosen to abstain, but we've yet to hear from any of the other sitting ICC members. So at this current rate, it looks like this will not be passing. Obviously, anything can happen in the ecosystem, but we have up until, let's see here, the 15th of March, which is when this particular proposal will expire. So roughly around 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks-ish, until we get an official confirmation as to whether or not this will pass. But right now, it looks like this will not actually make it through. That will do it there for updates relating to governance and Intersect. Next and last, we're going to jump into updates here around the ecosystem. Again, I have to keep this relatively brief, but as always, if you've enjoyed this type of content, please smash that thumbs up. If you want more, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave those down below. So we're going to kick things off here with the State of Cardano, which is a quarterly report released by Masari. And I want to just briefly highlight some of the key metrics here, but I'm going to release a separate video diving deeper into all of these details. So when it comes to this last quarter, we've obviously had the initiation of governance through Chang hard fork, part number 2, or the Plomin hard fork. And we've now officially jumped into full-on governance with the Constitution officially ratified and enacted. But just generally speaking, we have Cardano price in the last quarter up over 126%, daily transactions up 65%, and DeFi total value locked up nearly 94%. If I jump over into just the key highlights here, again, I'm going to release a separate video. We've got the fact that Ouroboros Preos and Ouroboros Paris are right around the corner. Hopefully, again, increasing throughput and scaling. We've got the circulating market cap of Cardano, which has increased, obviously resulting in price appreciation. We've got fees, which have increased by nearly 254% quarter over quarter, which has been amazing. And then we've also got DeFi TVL up, and then the market cap of stablecoins up by 66%, giving us nearly $23 million of assets managed in stablecoins. So that's a pretty cool update that we want to see there. Again, things are moving in the right direction, slowly but surely. Next, I want to briefly touch on an update that was just released by the Giro Wallet team. So I'm going to play this video here. And Giro Wallet is really becoming more than a wallet. They are now the Giro dashboard. And so they've got a couple of really, really cool updates coming very soon. But it states that with their rebrand, they've resubmitted their application to the Chrome store, and hopefully with the addition of the Apple Play Store there as well. Now, their latest updates includes the following: their cashback feature, which allows for you to pay with any credit card online in order to unlock crypto rewards. They've also incorporated governance directly in their dashboard with the ability to delegate straight to DREPs and the ability to engage in decision-making straight from their dashboard. They've also taken advantage of the Cardano Shield, which provides advanced phishing defense using AI. And I want to say community insights where anybody can plug in, obviously it has to be reviewed, any bad actors or any bad tokens, which can then be added to their growing list of assets to watch out for. Obviously, there's also sort of the basic crypto features, which include the ability to swap. And then they've also provided some pretty cool wallet analytics built in directly within the dashboard. Another cool piece to mention here is the fact that they've also added support for Apex Fusion, which, if you aren't aware, Apex is now trading. I believe they launched on L Bank. They're working to get listed on a few other exchanges right now, but the token started off at, I want to say 15 cents, and it's currently trading at 24 cents, so up roughly around 60%. And of course, I mentioned this before, but I am a stake pool operator on their blockchain there as well. So if you want to extend your support to Dapp Central on Apex, I'll also have some content coming out about that. In terms of what's coming up next for the Giro team, they highlight the fact that they'll be working on their direct banking integrations, the ability to sign multi-sig transactions directly from their dashboard. They'll have a social login feature, as well as their ZK Fiat on and off ramp, and then the ability to roll up fees. They'll also be providing ADA flow, a security feature to allow for you to visibly and quickly see the flow of ADA between different wallets and transactions and smart contracts. And then, of course, they'll also be bringing on their subscription feature. Now, it's really, really cool to just see Adam and the entire team from Jira Wallet take what used to only be a wallet and to rebrand it to do so many other things. I'll have to see if I can get some of their time to just get a better understanding and a deeper dive into everything that they've built so far. Next, we've got a pretty brief tease here coming in here from El Raulito, the CTO and the one who codes from Fluid Token. So he's teased out the fact that this week should be a pretty big week from their particular project with the release of Aquarium in just a couple of days. This will enable Babel fees in a sense, meaning that you'll be able to pay for transactions using Cardano native assets in your wallet, even if you don't currently hold ADA. He also mentions a new lending and borrowing update or platform release in just a couple of weeks, as well as the fact that they've been working alongside the team from MinSwap on their smart tokens DEX, which is now currently in audit. Now, their smart tokens, if I'm not mistaken, takes advantage of SIT number 113, which brings along token standards to quickly and more easily create things that conform to securities regulations, to stablecoin regulations, etc. And so again, with them working alongside MinSwap, we should hopefully get something very soon. And then he talks about the fact that something's happening at midnight. Now, if you aren't aware, this particular team is also working to be one of the pioneers or OG adopters of the Midnight Partner Chain or the Partner Chain Framework, where they'll also be launching lending and borrowing on that particular network. In closing, he mentions a new product at Fluid Tokens XBT on Bitcoin, which again has really been one of their core focuses as of late, where we've heard about, the fact that IOG, Cardano, and Charles wants to make Cardano the Bitcoin DeFi layer. And of course, with things such as Bitcoin OS, which will make it a lot easier, right, for liquidity to flow in between Bitcoin and Cardano. So we've got Fluid Tokens, hopefully providing some pretty big updates this week. I'll keep you guys updated as things roll out. In closing, there's been some conversations around batcher fees in the ecosystem. Of course, with MinSwap being by far the biggest DEX here in the ecosystem, one of the most adopted and one of the most mature, they've weighed in here stating that they're going to be working and listening to the community. Now, there's been a couple of different proposals here, right? People understanding the fact that while, yes, batcher fees are needed, right now we've been stuck at the same sort of batcher fee amount since the inception of Cardano smart contracts and just DEXs in general. And so there's been talks about making the DEX space more competitive by reducing or removing, right, the fees associated with batchers in general. And since then, the MinSwap team has taken it upon themselves to release an article directly on X, breaking down batcher fees and the fact that they're going to be working on doing something relatively soon. So could we see the MinSwap DEX be the first DEX on Cardano to remove or to get rid of batcher fees entirely? It seems like that is a possibility. Even if they don't fully remove them, it sounds like they are open to at least dramatically or significantly reducing them, which definitely would give them a competitive edge. But for anybody who wants to find out more, as always, I'll leave the link to this down below. That will do it here for today's update, briefly touching on Bitcoin, Cardano governance, and just a couple of projects here in the ecosystem. Again, I'm going to have more content coming out here very soon. So if you enjoyed this, please smash that thumbs up on the way out. If you want more, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.